just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend Rashid. And as we wait for Larry Johnson to join us today, we'll talk about a few issues that are ongoing. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries. Now, this is what I want to say. We're having technical difficulties beyond my control for the yesterday and today. Okay, I want to tell you that there was a big storm here. It is messing with the internet. We have the people coming out today and tomorrow to check everything. There was a specific outage in this area, so we're going to have to look past that and do what we can to keep going on the show. But as we wait for Larry, let's talk about a few things, because I'm so glad to be back, and just to talk to you about a few things. Now, we know that there will be and there is a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and I believe that some of this is theater. I believe, because if you look at it, when you look at a magician, the magician does the sleight of hand. He directs your attention and your eyes somewhere else away from the trick. Okay? And I believe because the United States has become so desperate in its attempt to cower the world, to maintain its position around the globe, and to maintain its world order, that it is now grasping for straws. Now, I'm not saying that there's no deal being made behind closed doors, because frankly and honestly, in this world, you can hardly trust any leader, okay? And that's serious. But I believe that what is going on right now is a geopolitical sleight of the hand. I believe that this meeting that is taking place is to give the United States a little breathing room. I believe it is taking place to also see personally if they can bring Vladimir Putin around to their ideas. I believe this is what is going on. So when we look at this again, remember, sleight of hand. Always when dealing with politicians, all right? When dealing with, shout out to Joel Bradford in the building, when dealing with politics, there's always a sleight of hand going on. I call them magicians. Larry is in the building. I'll bring him on the screen and just right now. I'll bring Larry in right now. How's it going today, my friend?
Hey, I'm good. How are you? Finally,
I'm doing pretty good.
Made it on time.
Larry, what do you think is going on with the meeting between President Putin and President Trump?
Trump needs a win. Putin would like to have good relations with the United States, but the way Trump is, the way this is being portrayed in the States is that Trump is, Putin's desperate to get a deal, that Trump is in the driver's seat, and that Trump's the organ grinder and Putin's the monkey and has to dance around. Well, if anything, it's just the opposite. Trump is, he's raising expectations for a deal, and then at the same time lowering expectations, saying there won't be a deal. I mean, he literally is on complete opposite sides of the issue in the same day. And they're just waiting for him now to come on. He's going to make some remarks about Social Security, but I'm sure he'll talk about the summit tomorrow. The Russian position, there's no confusion about it. The Russians have had the same basic position since June 14th of 2024, so a year, 2 months ago. And that position is that the four former oblasts plus Crimea are all part of Russia today. They're part of the Russian Federation. They're as much a part of Russia as California, Washington, Oregon, and Colorado are part of the United States. So you can't, Putin can't show up and offer to trade those away any more than Trump can go to Alaska and offer to give Alaska back to Russia. It's just, it's constitutionally not possible. The second thing is the Russians will continue to insist on is the end of NATO support and NATO involvement in Ukraine. And they're gonna end that one way or the other. They'll either end it through diplomacy, through negotiations, where the West finally, pulls its head out of its ass and says we're not going to do this anymore, or they'll do it militarily, and which is what really Russia is doing right now. They're in the process of tearing open the Ukrainian defensive line, and Ukraine is panicking, along with many in Europe. That has to come to an end. The NATO relationship. I could see the possibility that Putin would give Trump some throwaway. He said, "Look, I'll withdraw my forces from Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy, and Kharkiv if Ukraine withdraws its forces from those areas, and there is a halt to Western military aid to Ukraine." And so that way Trump can come and say, "Hey, I got the deal. This is all, Ukraine's got to pull out, but Russia's going to pull out." And Ukraine will say, "Hell no, we're not going to take that deal because we're too busy making other people die for us." So, they'll probably, I anticipate that the summit will end in a way that Trump and Putin will be agreeing to meet again in Russia, and Trump will get a big tour to get to go to Russia, to probably to Moscow. We shall, but beyond that, there's no chance that the Russians are going to surrender, or the Russians are going to give up the military advantage they have right now on the ground. They're doing phenomenally well.
Well, Larry, how could they pull out of Kharkiv? Isn't that one of the regions that Russia declared that would become part of the Russian?
No, that's Kherson.
Oh, Kherson. Okay.
Yeah, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk. Kharkiv is near Kursk, and the Russians. What the Russians have said or intimated is, if Ukraine doesn't take the current deal, which is recognize that Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia are Russian, recognize that's Russian. If you don't take that, then the next time we come back with a deal, with an offer, it's also, we're going to have Dnipropetrovsk, we're going to have Kharkiv, we're going to have Sumy, Poltava, and we're going to take those too. That's the Russian approach.
Well, will it make sense for them to accept a deal like that and leave Odessa, so that the West can use that port to as a trading point, because the West is adamant about keeping control of Odessa for Ukraine to make it a viable state, and Russia and Odessa was once Russian land.
Yeah. Well, I think the way Russia's calculating is it's going to put this offer directly in front of Trump. And Trump will either reject it, try to modify it, or accept it. I mean, those are the only three possibilities. If Trump rejects it, then, Russia's in great shape. They'll say, hey, we offered a peaceful settlement. They're the ones that rejected it. If Trump wants to modify it, there's really, Russia has no flexibility. They're inflexible when it comes to giving up the territory that they now have. It's now officially part of Russia. And they're inflexible with regards to NATO and the continued support for Ukraine. But then if Trump comes out and embraces it, says, yeah, this is a reasonable deal, the Russians know that Ukraine's not going to accept it. But that's okay, because that way they get to say, we made this deal, this offer, Ukraine rejected it. Okay, now there's going to be a new deal, and then the tougher deal. And we've seen the evolution of this. If you go back to March of 2022 into April, when the Russians and Ukrainians were negotiating in Istanbul, Turkey, at that point, the Russians were willing to accept an agreement which would have left Donetsk and Luhansk as part of Ukraine. So they weren't even insisting in 2022 that Donetsk and Luhansk become part of Russia. Well, when that deal was blown up, we saw what happened. In September, the deal blew up. April of 2022, the Russians organized elections in Zaporizhia and Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk. The people voted overwhelmingly to join Russia, and at that point, those four oblasts, formerly a part of Ukraine, now became republics, part of the Federal Republic of Russia. And that will continue if Ukraine rejects this opportunity.
I'm trying to make heads or tails of this, because if Vladimir Putin is under tremendous pressure, or pressure from his military and from the people not to negotiate, because think about all of the lost treasure, all of the lost blood spilled in this war, and then they already stated that America is agreement incapable.
Yeah.
Why would they trust the U.S. in a deal that would leave a viable Ukrainian state where NATO could then double back on it and restart everything over again? And the next time around, it'll cost double or triple the amount of money, blood, and the loss of lives. To me, that it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't Putin give an ultimatum? This is where it's going to be. This is where it stands. This is what's going to happen. Because the United States really has little to no play or leverage in this matter, because they are open participants in the conflict. So wouldn't it be better for Vladimir Putin to be amenable to the press, but to be firm with Trump behind closed doors and say, listen, we can present this as a deal, but we want Kiev, we want Odessa, we want this, we want that, and there is no negotiations. NATO must pull out all of its assets, whether it's intelligence agencies, their NGOs, and their military out of what would remain as Ukraine. And the reason I brought Kiev up in that is because that was once a Russian region also.
Right. Well, no, there's, look, Putin is not going to surrender on any of those issues. He's learned the lesson from Minsk II. He did this back in 2015, where they were on the militias of Donetsk and Luhansk with support from, I think, the Wagner group, had the Ukrainian army surrounded and was ready to destroy it. And the Germans, Angela Merkel, intervened with Putin and they got a ceasefire in place, and then negotiated Minsk II. And it's only later did we learn, according to Merkel, that was just a scam, a ruse, to fool Russia to give breathing space to Ukraine to rebuild its military, which they did. And Putin has acknowledged that he was fooled, that he made a mistake. So I don't see him doing that again. And they're not going to get. He's not going to get upset. Not going to make threats or demands. He just simply lays out what Russia's position is, which I outlined at the start, and that includes the end of NATO in Ukraine and the withdrawal of these foreign advisors, foreign forces. Now, Ukraine won't agree to that, so okay, Russia will make it happen on the ground. They're going to do it militarily. So I don't see there's any necessarily distance or friction between him and the general staff. I think they're all on the same sheet of music. Russia right now is advancing rapidly in ways that never seen except for the opening days of the war back in February 24, 25, 26.
Mm-hmm. So there was a major strike. Russia struck a multiple military plants, destroying what Ukraine termed as the Safon missile, which is the Taurus missile. And Russia has openly acknowledged that Germany was funding it and had active service people there. The U.S. and the West had active service people there, quote unquote, assisting in the building of these long-range strike weapons.
Yeah.
Do you believe that if Vladimir Putin agrees to a halt or agrees to a deal, that this would erode his support at home? Because he's been riding on 80 and 90% support, and now the Russian people are saying, "Hey, let's get this thing over with," because you cannot trust America, you cannot trust NATO.
Well, actually, I think they're that's what they're doing. I've seen no indication that Putin's going to make a deal that would result in an immediate ceasefire, a halt to Russian military activities that are underway, and an acceptance of NATO presence in Ukraine. None of that's going to happen. There's just, because if he did such a thing, then he'd be removed as president. He would, lose his support, as you correctly note. But no, I've seen no evidence whatsoever that that's what he's, thinking or planning to do.
So whether does that leave President Trump and his position, Mr. Art of the Deal, when he's saying that he's looking for a deal, if Russia is firm, and they have been saying the same, they've been openly stating the same demands since before the start of the special military operation, and Trump is stating that he's disappointed in Vladimir Putin because one minute Vladimir Putin, and we know this is political theater, but
right.
1 minute Vladimir Putin agrees to X, Y, and Z, and the next minute he's quote unquote bumming schools and orphanages. Where does this leave the empire and the emperor that has no clothes?
He's going to be scurrying around Anchorage looking for a big tube of lipstick, because he's going to have to use that lipstick on the pig as he's putting it after the summit's over. Okay. Yeah. Good. This is like, I've likened it to, it's like having to dress up Jabba the Hutt, make him look pretty. That ain't happening. So he'll probably declare victory. Oh man, we had the best meeting ever. There's never been a meeting this good. I mean, my God, it was like, God himself couldn't have had a meeting this good. And so we're going to meet again in Moscow. And well, what did you accomplish? Oh, we made progress, but I'm not free to discuss it right now. Something like that. So
do you think his bravado and his stick it's wearing thin not only among his detractors but his base and his supporters?
Well, I can only speak for myself. It just downright pisses me off. I admit I supported Trump, and I saw he was, and in fact, it's still better than if we had that Kamala Harris in there, for God's sakes. She's just, not a smart person. But Trump's problem is he is so just terribly insecure. That's why he's always talking about me, 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 me. I did this, I did that. The same with Barack Obama. They share that in common. But I know a friend of mine who's been around Trump in personal meetings and such. He says, Trump was, as a kid, he was the kid that when it came time to choose up sides, to choose someone to play on your football team or your baseball team or your basketball team, Trump always got chosen last. Nobody wanted him on their team. And, they really gave him a complex as a kid. And that's carried over with him into his adult life. That, he wears his insecurity on his sleeve, which is why you hear him constantly talking about, I need the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, really, who talks that way? You say, can you have a little bit of humility, for God's sake?
Go ahead.
Now,
Larry, again,
now, I don't. He's not. There's a difference between, let's call it, between Donald Trump and Muhammad Ali, aka Cassius Clay. Now, Muhammad Ali in his prime, I mean, he knew he was joking. I'm the prettiest, I'm the fastest, I'm the most amazing man there is. He was an entertainer, but I'm the greatest. But when it coming out of Trump's mouth, he's not joking. He's actually compensating. So, this meeting, when he gets one-on-one with Putin, he's going to be fine. In fact, he's going to be trying to, he wants Putin to like him. He's going to be very seeking, reassurances. Then it'll be interesting once they come out of the meeting, and it goes from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde.
Do you think he's playing for time? Not just for the Ukrainian-Russian situation, but I'm talking about the Iranian-Israeli situation and the so-called pivot to Asia, because America has limits now to her power. People are de-dollarizing, and the economy is like a crapshoot, and we see there's a growing divide amongst the politicians and the people whom they govern. Do you think that he's trying to buy a little time and reposition America away from the Russian conflict somewhat, so that they can focus more on Iran and China?
Well, see, you're talking common sense and strategy, at least how somebody should be looking at it. But that's not Trump. These people that think that Trump's playing 5D chess, I think he struggles to play checkers. His moves are impulsive. They're not well thought out. I'll just give you an example. What's really the number one health problem in the United States? Diabetes, right?
Right.
Type 2 diabetes. Because we got, we eat so much junk food and overload our systems with sugar. So by the time you get to be an adult, you're unable to produce insulin at the levels you need. Who knows? So the number one country in the world for exporting to the United States, the drugs that are used to treat diabetes, is Switzerland. And what did Trump do? He imposed bone-crunching sanctions, tariffs on Switzerland. And the Swiss are going, what the hell? Yeah, I mean, because they're not that big of an economy. It's not, they're not China by any stretch. And yet, these tariffs that they're putting on those drugs or on other products, machinery, electrical items that Switzerland made, was hurting the Swiss economy. And so now they're angry at the United States. We didn't need to do that. It's like Trump went out of his way to piss off a friend. And that's where you got to say, what's he thinking? They are to continue to be involved in the war, the genocidal war of Israel against the Palestinians, then to continue to entertain Israel's idea of attacking Iran again. There are a lot of us around the world that are just hoping that happens so that Israel gets wiped out, because Iran will wipe them out if it goes to that. But it's just, it's outrageous what the United States is doing. And then at the same time, we've, on the one hand, we talk tough and want to treat China like an enemy, but notice how many times Trump has deferred in the tariffs on China. Give him another 90 days. Well, why is he doing that? Because the Chinese have us by the balls on rare earth minerals and as magnets and several key sectors. We can't live without them. We continue to produce critical military weapons and systems without Chinese imports. And the Chinese are saying, screw you. We're not going to give you the bullets or the ammunition that you can put in your gun so you can shoot us. We're not stupid. So, Trump's really created a problem for himself, unnecessary problem at that.
Well, what about this Epstein situation? Because it seems like they can release documents and data on the Trump, the Russian hoax thing, but they can't release any data on the Epstein thing. And a lot of people are saying that Mossad may have Trump by the cojones, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. And after you answer, we'll bring it to a close, because I know you have another show to go to.
No. Well, I was just keeping an eye to see if Trump's shown up yet to make his speech. I don't know if you saw. There's a guy that writes on Telegram, Substack, called Technofog. He's a lawyer, and he finally got his hands on, from a FOIA request, evidence that Jeffrey Epstein had been an FBI, let's call him cooperator. I'm not sure he was a fully signed up confidential human source, but he was certainly providing the FBI with information back in 2007, 2008. So when Epstein gets arrested, I'm sure he was putting the word out to the Bureau, you better get me out of here, or I'm going to tell them exactly what it is that you knew about what I was doing. I think the FBI killed him. I think or elements within DOJ, they had him killed because they weren't going to risk that kind of embarrassment. So it may be not so much foreign blackmail by Mossad as it is blackmail from within the FBI itself. And notice, here was, Kash Patel, before he got into government, boy, he's a big talker. Well, look what we're going to do. We're going to get, and then he gets in there, nothing to see here, and then he lies. He flat out lies. Oh, that videotape has been untouched. No, it was actually manipulated, and moreover, all the other cameras that should have been on were turned off, and that one camera that you're showing doesn't even show the cell of Jeffrey Epstein, and that doesn't show another door that whereby people could get in and out of the jail. So, I'm more convinced now in the light of that leak that someone, FBI, DOJ were involved in having Epstein killed.
So it seems like the whole Trump administration is starting to lose whatever credibility and political capital that it had with its base, because you look at who was the Congresswoman
Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Not Marjorie, the head of intelligence now.
Oh, you mean Tulsi Gabbard?
Tulsi Gabbard, and how she had been silent on a lot of things, and all of a sudden, when pressure comes down on Trump about Epstein, she comes out with documents on Obama and Biden and the Trump and the Russia hoax, and then we see that Kash Patel is changing his story. We see that there's a lot of, and we know that every time the wind blows, Trump changes his story. So where does that leave them in the standing of the people who stood before them? Because the Congresswoman Greene, she is threatening to even pull out of the Republican Party because she said she voted for America first, and they're putting Israel first, and they're doing everything else besides what they said.
Yeah, well, you also seen this with Candace Owens. She was a strong Trump supporter, and boy, he's certainly damaged his relationship with her. And she's got 4.4 million people signed up as subscribers on her site, so she's got some clout, some reach. You've seen the same with Joe Rogan, turning it against Trump, like what the hell. Tucker Carlson, not directly opposing Trump, but certainly highlighting issues and topics that are, sort of shoving it in Trump's face, particularly with respect to Israel. He's done in the last 2 weeks, he had John Mearsheimer on talking about the history of Israel and how, the whole Zionist project was really a fraud. You've got, then he had on this Colonel Aguilar, who twice, who was a witness to the war crimes being carried out in Gaza, was part of the humanitarian relief aid. And then he just had a Orthodox Christian nun on his program the other day who's been living in the West Bank for 30 years and defending Hamas and denouncing Israel. So when you're losing people like that, like Tucker, like Candace, you're making a mistake.
And what is it? Last question. How does he think this reflects on him and his standing with the MAGA and his support base when he attacks those people who want to question him and who wants to have him accountable?
Yeah, no, it just, like I said, it alienates the base. So this is about trying to get more support, not less support. And when he turns around, and in particular on the whole Epstein issue, he said, if you think that's important and you're my base, I don't want you to support me. Jeez, really? Yeah, you're that stupid. It's unbelievable.
Oh man, Larry, once again, I know you're busy, man, but every time
I always got time for you. I appreciate
I really appreciate it, man.
Appreciate the invite.
Man, I really appreciate it, Larry. I'll send you the video in a few minutes, man. Be blessed and be safe. And let's watch this clown show as it continues on.
Yeah, but let's hope it works out well. I'm with you. Later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Everybody, listen. Join us at 6:30 today on the Red Pill Diaries. We'll have Carl Zaw. We'll be doing our weekly or bi-weekly or monthly edition of the War Report. We're going to be talking about a lot of the issues that are going on. We're going to specifically talk about Africa, Latin America, the Balkans, West Asia, Asia proper, and what the U.S. and NATO are doing and trying to do there. Please join us then. Support the channels. Go to all of the platforms and please support them. We're on Rumble, Odyssey, Twitter, Twitch. What's the other one? Telegram now. So join us and go to locals. Locals. It's the empowerment of truth.locals.com and join us there. If you like the show, please give us a thumbs up. You can support us through PayPal and what else? Cash App. So everybody, listen. I want to thank you all for your time because you did not have to give your time here, and we know that time is the most precious and most valued commodity, and it's an unrenewable resource because once you use it up, there's no getting it back. And so we hope that the time that you spent with us, that's why it's called spending your time. We hope that the time that you spent with us, you receive an equal or greater return for that time. On that note, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, on God's green earth. And I want to say do right by others, not because there's some material gain in it or some accolades or some applause in it. Do right by others because it's the right, the humanely, and the godly thing to do, because even when no one else is watching you, remember that God Almighty himself is watching you. He sits high, as my mom always says, but he looks low. Know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, remember to stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. We're out of here. Peace.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a